Color schemes. So the main thing to keep in mind here is doesn't necessarily matter what type of color scheme you choose. You just want to make sure that you are implementing some sort of color scheme because you want colors that harmonize as well as create contrast depending on what you're trying to do, so that it's more visually interesting. So I'm just going to kind of specify some general ones. So right off the bat, there's monochromatic color. It just means that there's one color and then we change the value from light to dark, or we use tints and shades of that color. So, right, so there's dark red and then there's light red, which is pink, right? So that's what a monochromatic color scheme is. Generally would have a lot of harmony, right? Would be very unified. However, it might be a little less visually interesting because it would just be all one color, right? So then there's achromatic, which is without color, right? Just black and white and all the variation there within. Even more harmonious, you might argue, than a monochromatic color, but also a lot more boring. Okay, so most of the time this color scheme doesn't make sense. A lot of times you could do is use one of these, but then you would have like one little spice of color where like you'd have one little green or yellow element, and that would really stick out instead of a monochromatic color scheme. And the same thing here, like you might have a black and white, but then maybe you have like a red element, and that would really pop if that's something that you were going for. Complementary color scheme. Basically, you choose colors that are on the opposite side of the color wheel from each other. So, for example, you could take red and green, or you could do purple and yellow, or blue and orange. Those are really popular. A lot of times you will see these colors used in advertising. You see them a lot in for sports teams. You look at the NFL or MLB or whatever, you'll notice that their colors are usually very vibrant and they're typically complementary. That's just because it makes it easier for them for you to see them, and it makes them pop out. Okay, so complementary is really good for advertisement, but it's not going to be as unified per se as some of the other color schemes. Then there's the split complementary. It's kind of pretty similar to what this is, but instead of doing a color that's directly across, you choose two colors that are, tangentially connected to them, and then that becomes your color scheme. So we would do like red, this kind of lime green, and this kind of blue green. It's not really very blue green though, is it? But you get kind of the idea there. So it would probably be a little bit more harmonious than this one, but it would have a little less pop as well. Then there's analogous color scheme. That is choosing colors that are kitty corner to each other on the in the color wheel here. So you can see these are kind of the colors you would get by choosing these three in here. Okay, so you would do something like red purple to orange or something. So you would have that whole range of color. It's usually very harmonious, right? The colors will match each other pretty well, but it might not be as visually popping. Most of the time, I would say you probably want to choose something in the analogous color scheme. It generally works the best. Then we have the triadic color scheme, which is terrible. You don't generally want to use it, but basically it's kind of like a complementary color scheme where you just use things that are on three different ends of that color wheel in order to make the color, okay, or in order to get your color scheme. But it's got a lot of contrast and it's very fun. Like you could see something like this would be good for like a preschoolers or a elementary kid. You might see them use kind of a bright color scheme like this, right? But so it kind of depends on your demographic. So if I was going to do something a little bit more professional, I might choose something like this or maybe one of these. But if I was going to do something where I'm trying to make a product, I might do one of these too. So it kind of depends on what the purpose of your website is going to kind of determine what kind of color scheme you want to apply.